Hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Says Pop Online Says Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to welcome back Rich Christensen, who is in Utah. How are you doing, Rich?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Rich has just released his latest book, Blindsided, just in October of this year, an intimate and evocative memoir of identity and definition of family. Age 53, successful entrepreneur, faithful member of the Church of the Latter-day Saints. Rich discovered his ancestors weren't who he thought they were, and he and his brothers were only partly related. So the DNA test tells you that your identity is different and launches a search for healing, acceptance, and self-love. Turns out you're one of the first donor babies, correct?
Yeah, how about that? That's
How
quite
about
the little wake-up call at 53, Lived a pretty remarkable life and kind of figured out where all that rocket fuel came from.
yeah. But yeah, it just shows you're never too old to have a few surprises landed on you.
No, no, you're never too old to deconstruct it and rebuild it up maybe a little bit more stable too, John.
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today is how to dismantle limiting beliefs, ignite clear insights into focused priorities, and embark on a transformative journey towards a harmonious life flow. Um, Richard, let's just start off. Just give me some examples of common limiting beliefs, because I think that probably a lot of people think, oh, I don't really have limiting beliefs. And I don't really know what they are anyway.
Well, I'd go so far as to say everybody has limiting beliefs,
Mhm.
even the most enlightened. It's just part of this mortal conditioning that we have, and most of them happens when we're very young. I know
Mhm.
that I grew up in a very unique situation where my father was completely blind,
Mhm.
and so at the age of 3 or 4, when most kids are running around, I have bells tied to my shoes so Dad can find me.
Right.
And that alone, the childhood memories of 4, 5, 6 is a lot of the time where our limiting beliefs come from. Our family of origin affects that dramatically. And
Mhm.
so if you don't think that you have limiting beliefs, then well, you're the only one. We all have them.
Yeah. And I think so, and I think sometimes, Rich, we think that these things have to be big, right? They have to be big, significant things, but they can be what look like relatively innocuous and insignificant things, but they have an outsized impact.
What appears sometimes just the small little teeny things that, and it doesn't have to always be like major sources of
Mhm.
trauma. But yeah, it can have pretty dramatic impact on just how we frame the world. I mean, we just went through this crazy political
Yeah.
situation. Look how dramatically everyone is framing that. It's like it's the lens that we choose to look at things through that make the difference.
Mhm.
And, I mean, from a life standpoint and a perspective standpoint, I think how we approach others, it's the old Stephen Covey, my mentor's mantra is seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if we understand how other people are framing it, how much easier it is for us to then relate to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you just mentioned about the election. I always think it's fascinating. I always say to people that, when you shout at somebody and tell them that they're stupid, uh, rarely do they go, "Oh, you're correct. I didn't realize that. I should think the way you think." And we've just come out of a period where we're in that period where people just love to shout at each other. And think that somehow they're being persuasive. And like I said, I don't think anybody's ever persuaded somebody by starting off with "you're an idiot."
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's actually a very tragic state that we're
Yeah.
at, and it points far more, John, to a state of loneliness. And actually, I think a
Mhm.
lot of the reasons why I wrote this book is an attempt to move back into middle way and to expand the level of platform.
Mhm.
What's happening here is so many of us are so deeply lonely. It's
Yeah.
a lot easier to go stand with the group that we don't even know and be part
Mhm.
of something where we're hating someone else, at least we belong,
Mhm.
rather than actually be alone.
Yeah.
So it really is indicative of just loss of community, loss of tribe, loss of foundational elements. And at what point we can ignite that in people and give someone even just a little bit. The ultimate human need isn't to be right. It isn't.
No.
We've got it all wrong. This political election showed that it's to actually be seen and to be
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah.
And indeed, the most fearful, terrifying thing we can do, I've learned very intimately, is to be seen, to actually
Mm.
really show who we really are. And on the other hand, it's also the thing we need the very much. So the most terrifying thing is also the
The
deep human need that we have.
Yeah, and that's the fascinating, isn't it? It's not the fascinating paradox, if you like, especially if you say about being seen, and maybe one of your limiting beliefs is that it's better to be in the background. It's better to be, it's better not to stick your head above the parapet or whatever. And so, I mean, there's a limiting belief that maybe you need to confront, because at the end of the day, as you said, I mean, you're fighting against your deepest need.
Yeah, yeah, I think that that's exactly right, and I think, if you've got that belief, and I think we all got different, the other side of that coin is, "Oh, I gotta be seen no matter what, let me in," And what that is a five-year-old child begging and screaming.
Right.
You're not this mature guy with the self-pop behind you. You're not that fancy pants most of the time. You're a quivering five-year-old just screaming, "Hey, you get this attention," and we run around acting like we're all cerebral, but most of our action comes back from the limbic brain, and the
Mhm.
only thing it's asking, do I eat it? Do I kill it? Or do I mate with it? And
Mhm.
that's 90% of what we do. And then once in a while, we're able to take few deep breaths and maybe actually get to some clarity and move into our frontal cortex and actually operate a little bit higher than some of that limbic brain. But I think that the true peace and joy in life, and actually really living a life of realization, and you can, whatever faith perspective or view you have, call it universe, nirvana, uh, whatever you want to call it, you really don't get true peace until you actually just kind of get clear with who you really are. That's when
Yeah.
the real joy comes from.
So how do you start out on that journey of really figuring out who you really are? Because I do think I think that's such a challenge for people today, because we're so overwhelmed, we're so distracted, we've got all these gadgets, we're being bombarded with TikTok videos and panda videos and whatever, and taking stepping back for a moment from the world to really understand who you are seems to run almost counterculture.
Yeah, I think that the biggest distraction we have in the world are these little devices. And I think there's really three things, and I can't tell anyone what to do.
Sure.
I can only tell what I did to actually get a moment of clarity and peace. And it took me a major life crisis, completely disassembling my entire identity. I mean, 51 businesses. I mean, you ever met
Mhm.
anyone with that much trauma? I founded or co-founded 51 businesses, 19 failures, 17 multi-million. That's a lot of daddy
Mm.
issues stored
Yep.
up right there trying to prove yourself. And so it wasn't until I was 53 years old and my life completely got disassembled that I was able to take a hard look at it. And I think the three things that I would give you here is first of all, realize that you do have limiting beliefs. There actually is something to look at here, and if you're continuing in turmoil, worrying what people are think, you're not there. That's limiting beliefs. Number two is not be afraid to face the big hairy dragons. It's not till you look it in the eyeball and run towards your fears and the things that are scaring the tar out of you, and whether that's an addiction or
Mhm.
a really broken childhood or intimacy issues or a level of narcissism or a level of scarcity of hiding, whatever it is, you've got to run towards it. You can't hide from it. You can only hide under the damn desk for so long until it catches up with you. And so you got to go down the throat of the big hairy monster. That's number two. And number three is take time. You got to form your way to actually get quiet enough. Turn the
Mm.
phone off. Do your daily practice at Power Hour. I've found in my life now a daily walk with no distraction that I can just think, caring for my body very carefully and going slowly, deliberately going slow for a period of time. And meditation and breath work have been profoundly helpful to stop the chatter in my brain to understand then what the real clarity points are. So those are the three suggestions I
Yeah.
might offer.
And on the time issue, I mean, I think that's such an important one because, as I said earlier, we have this sense of having no time, right? We're so busy all the time, and again, a lot of it has to do with distraction rather than really being that busy. Um, and so you have to make a conscious decision to set aside that time. You're going to have to make a conscious decision to be with yourself, to think, to be in your own head for a little bit. And that's scary to a lot of people.
Well, it's terrifying to most people. It's not just scary, it's terrifying. We began to use these cliches. Watch how the teenagers, wall up in
Mhm,
fear of being again alone. The ultimate human
mhm,
again is to not be seen or heard. And so it's better to put that wall up. So in most people, it is absolutely terrifying to go internal private with yourself. But it's also where you get all the peace. And if
mhm,
we could just slow this thing down and pull it apart a little bit, three-quarters of our depression and anxiety would just go away. Just
mhm.
it would naturally evaporate. So I think it's mandatory that we take the time to do that. And I'll just make this comment that if I had figured this out and done this earlier in my life, yeah, I would have had a 50% better hit rate, and I would have created half the companies that I did.
Right. Uh-huh.
It's the issue of motion versus momentum, isn't it, John? It really
Yeah.
is. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm getting something done. You have to actually put momentum into it, not just motion.
Yeah.
95% of what we do is motion. And then to quote Warren Buffett, the level of my success is directly proportionate to the frequency at which I say no.
Yeah, and that is something that we struggle with. But I love that you brought up momentum versus like activity or whatever, because I do think that that's or motion, because I do think that that's an incredibly important distinction, because momentum is everything, right? You could see that you can see that in sports very easily. You see when a team gains momentum and belief, it just tends to start running really smoothly. Um, but we confuse, as you said, we confuse motion and activity and busy work and all of that with momentum. Well, I'm doing a lot, therefore I must be moving forward, when reality I'm standing still.
95% of the work that we do in corporate America companies is nothing more than
Mm.
motion. You show me someone who's deliberate and thoughtful and well formed and takes the moment in the morning to actually get the clarity. Because if you do three most important activities per day. If you really did those three, that's all you'd have to do in the day. The rest is just noise. I love to quote Gandhi in this area, and he just right as they were going to like the big salt march right before he was going into the house in England.
Mhm.
His comment was this: "Today is such a vital day, such an important day, such a critical day. We have so much to do today. We have to take an extra hour to pray."
Right. Yeah, and then there you go. I mean, that's very profound. To get more done, you have to take more time to be with yourself or be with your God or whatever it is.
I'm going to back up to the statement I made earlier. I co-founded 51 businesses now in my career. 51, that's a heck of a lot. 19
Mhm.
failures. If I had been in the mode that I was in now, I would have created half the companies and I would have had far better outcomes. Noise and jitter does not translate into success. It's actually
Mhm.
deliberately, thoughtfully. Show me any great leader, any great wisdom leader. You don't see them scurrying around, running around the room with their hair on fire. Deliberate, it's thoughtful, it's controlled, and it's well purposed. It's
Mhm.
not motion, it's momentum.
Yeah, and the other thing that you mentioned, the second part about confronting your fears, right? I mean, the thing is, I think sometimes we think that there's things that we ignore or we don't want to deal with, and we don't consider them. It's not because I'm afraid or these are things I need to confront. It's just things that I just can't be bothered with. But those reality, the things you're avoiding, are actually the things you're afraid of, right?
Well, I think in multiple levels, both in our
Yeah.
personal life that then implement into practice. I just got to writing a post today that was titled "Do the Hard Thing." And I love to quote two examples on that. My younger brother, he's just lived an exceptional life, and everything he's done, he's just like, oh, but so disciplined. And I'd asked him what the secret of success was. He says, just do the hard thing first. Always do the hard thing,
Mm,
because everyone else is trying to do the easy thing. And as soon as you go towards the hard thing, you've differentiated yourself. A
mhm.
good friend of mine is Garrett Gunderson, and I love how he uses this model of hard, easy versus easy, hard. I actually knocked that off and deployed it in my family. But if we do the easy, easy thing, it gets very hard later. If
Mm.
you eat easy, 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 and don't pay attention to your health, you know what? When you get my age and your age, well, it gets very, very hard. You get diabetes, you get things falling apart.
Yep,
Look at a young person who doesn't want to get a skill and they just want to surf and run around the country and do nothing. It
yep,
may be easy, but then when you get our age, it's very, very hard. So always do the hard thing, and then it becomes much easy later. So I think there's
yeah.
this little level of discipline we've just got to have in our lives as we approach these things. And when we just ignore these little, they seem not that they may seem trivial, but the reality is they really do stack up. And I really discovered that, in this last little reveal in my life.
Yeah, and no, absolutely, and like you said, I mean, these things tend to stack up. So I think again, like I said earlier, I think sometimes people are always looking for these big things. Like there's big things that maybe I need to address, but often it's not. It's just this accumulation of similar things that are stacking up, right? And
No,
that
I think that is true, but I also think that we do end up with big things in our life. I
mhm.
know that entrepreneurs in general are the most functional, unfunctional people in the world. And a lot of times we have all these little hidden dragons that we're just using as rocket fuel to actually cover up and earn our love. And I just tell you, if you're struggling with an addiction, and we all have them, we all do, or really struggling with some hidden bogey, is go face it. Have the courage to face it and get peace in your life. And we're down here on this little spinning rock down here, not to run around to make a bunch of money,
Mhm.
although that's nice, but it's to actually grow our souls and have these deep, meaningful relationships. And we can't get to them if we're, masking it and covering up with a putty all the time.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, deep, meaningful relationships with others when you don't have a deep, meaningful relationship with yourself to begin with, obviously, is it's going to make the other a little harder.
That
Uh,
is the hardest. I think
yeah,
it's actually easier to forgive everyone else and easier to get a pass. But it sometimes the ones we're the very harshest on and hardest on is indeed ourselves.
yeah. And I think the other part too, Rich, is just being intentional about who you surround yourself with and what inputs you take in. I think that's one of the hardest things when people start to really take control of their lives. Is sometimes there may be people in their circle who are, and I hesitate to say are negative or whatever, but are maybe toxic in a way. But I always say it's not that person's fault. It's really your fault because you're keeping them in your circle for some reason. There's some reason they're fulfilling some role for you.
Yeah,
And
that's really
therefore, what's
Yeah,
that?
you're right. It's we have to accept the blame, of it. Is kind of a codependent. I carry with me everywhere I go this map of consciousness from Hawkins, David Hawkins, and I found profoundly helpful. But if we're just swimming, I mean, you can't expect to not get some poop on you if you're swimming in the
True.
sewage treatment plant.
Mhm.
And it's like so we got to be really careful what energy level we're keeping. And if we're living down here with a whole group of individuals that are just swimming in grief and apathy and fear, I mean, what do we think? We're going to live up in reason and love and joy?
Yeah.
Seriously. And you can walk into a room and without anything even being said, you can feel it.
Yep.
Walking down, I'm going to New York for this book signing next week. And you can walk down the street and instantly feel the energy of someone that's just kind of not in the great mojo. And
Yeah.
so it's like if you want to increase your frequency and live in courage and trust and hopeful, you better be with people that are hopeful and courageous and trustful.
Mhm.
You're just swimming in the soup down in humiliation and blame and despair. What do you think you're going to do? and
Exactly.
you can't help but get the turds on you swimming in a sewage treatment plant. Sorry.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, choose wisely, and making those changes in your life, they seem, once you start to make a few of them, they compound. So it's a journey.
They do. I want to comment one other little
Yes.
bit on that is I work a lot with young entrepreneurs that set up entrepreneurship
Mm.
centers. And the number one, do you know what the number one predictor of a successful entrepreneur might be, John? Any ideas?
Curiosity.
Well, actually, no. It's the mentor they take.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. Yeah, yeah.
The number one encouragement I give is to get a really good mentor, someone that they can model off of, which is actually that higher level of frequency, we're just talking about.
Mhm.
And so just making sure if you want to aspire to be just really thoughtful, go hang out with someone that's really thoughtful. If you want to be like wicked creative, go hang out with creators and join a group of creators. If you want to be really chill and zen and you're not, go join a yoga studio and sit with the monks,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like where we go and who we associate with rubs off on us in a really big kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to be really upset and negative, go hang out with upset and negative people.
There you go. If you want to be continually drunk, go to a bar. If you want to be continually inspired, go hang out with the Jesuit priests or something. I don't know.
Well, listen, thanks again, Rich. All of Rich's information will be below this video. This fascinating. The book just released, Blindsided, on all good bookstores, Amazon, etc. Go check it out. It's a fascinating book. It's a fascinating subject, and I think you'll find it quite revelatory. So I encourage you to go check it out. So thanks again, Rich. Thank you for watching and listening. I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.